I found the Zelles and Venmos in other countries and connected Bank of America to them.
Fantastic.
Super, I live by my digital calendar, and even I forget sometimes.
Do you think that's the reason why people don't
forget how trivial good pitch versus bad pitch can be, because that reaction is like literally what's going on and when people get money or don't. Welcome. What's your name?
Catherine Outlaw.
Catherine, you're going to have a minute to pitch your business and get some feedback. Are you feeling ready?
I'm ready.
Awesome. Catherine, what are you building?
I'm Catherine Outlaw, co-founder of Spheros. At Bank of America, my co-founders and I saw businesses struggle to share data with banks because they were using fragmented manual processes. Then at Circle, I spent 25% of my time submitting identical information to 50 plus banks over and over again. McKinsey says banks take up to 100 days and spend $25,000 onboarding each client. So we built Spheros, a secure and encrypted online hub where businesses upload their data once and share it instantly with any institution, like a trusted data wallet. Banks pay a subscription fee and their clients use it for free. We've secured 10 clients, 2 paying, and we're in pilot discussions with 4 of the 20 largest U.S. banks. We're raising $2 million to hire developers, sales team, and onboard 10,000 clients in the next 18 months. Join Spheros and transform onboarding into instant opportunity.
Well done. Good job.
Thank you.
Very poised pitch.
Yes.
Thank you.
Wow. So well, timed, rehearsed. Love it. Really cool. I think when you notice an opportunity for automating repetitive tasks, we're definitely in that era of right now. Kind of curious to know a little bit more. You said you and your founder, Matt, can you talk a little bit more about your background?
Yeah, absolutely. I started my career in investment banking at Bank of America, and after 5 years, I transitioned into the innovation payment space, also at Bank of America. And I met my 2 co-founders there, Holiday Shaw and Derek Walton. Also at B of A, Derek was leading the emerging payments and innovation team, and Holiday was leading a build of a recipient select product, and I led the new partners team. So we worked together for 3 years, and then I moved to Circle as head of new partners there before we all joined Spheros together.
Circle, the
issuer of USDC.
Got it. Yeah. That was a very linear answer. I think there was more to your answer that maybe even you're not emphasizing that I think I would tell you that an investor would want to hear. So you said you were part of you're part of the partnership. No, someone used the word recipient somewhere in there. It was your second co-founder.
Yes.
Was on what team?
Holiday built the recipient select
and
product.
then you're on the partnerships team.
That's right.
And then the first one was on the...
Derek Walton led the whole emerging payments and innovation division.
I don't know any of these people or you. And yet still, the thing that I'm noticing, and I'm going to guess, and you tell me if I'm, telling this sort of a story, I'm going to retell it to you. It sounds like one of your co-founders was on a product team building new payments products that had to do with, how a bank basically built something new and digital, financial rails, fintech rails. It sounds like you were on a team that dealt with partnerships as in the transfer of information and data and the revealing of, kind of sensitive or confidential information between 2 parties. And the recipients one dealt with, again, kind of either a workflow from a product perspective or from a client services perspective of when information had to go in a certain direction and was deemed important enough to have a name and a label.
Yes, generally, yes. We all were working with the exchange of payments data.
There's I think more to the evidence of that that your titles alone doesn't reveal. Because my assumption is in everything in the partnership side or that person's new payment side.
Yeah.
Or again, I still don't know what this recipient thing means, but my assumption about it, even just hearing the label, and again, this is a story that you maybe take more advantage of,
sure,
is you're literally dealing in the things you're now helping people deal with. And, that might feel obvious of you saw the problem, didn't you describe that in your minute pitch? But now when you're told to tell me about your background, it's kind of great. Now go, yeah, so we were here at Bank of America. And by the way, when we were building, I don't know if you were involved in Zelle, but I'm just going to use that as an example.
Actually, yes. I found the Zelles and Venmos in other countries and connected Bank of America to them.
Fantastic.
Super,
and so you say
that.
something like that and you go, great. You didn't just stand there while the problem of banking existed and realized the data thing while you were working on that.
Yeah.
You realized every time you went to a new market, you had to call up Derek and Derek had to do this. And then you called up Bob, I don't remember. and so that, I think, is the heft of your story.
Okay.
And again, usually people typically overemphasize this, right? I think in your case, you're slightly underemphasizing it here.
Sure.
There was something else I wanted to say. You then wrapped with Circle. There's another Circle, right? There's
There's like are you talking about like the Web3 company circle?
Well, that's the one, the
Yeah,
USDC
that's
Web3
the one.
company. I would get a little more specific because you have such a Bank of America. I would say like right in your first one, circle Web3 company, the company behind USDC, because I didn't quite understand whether or not you were a startup person yet. And one of the things about being at Bank of America for a long time is whether you like it or not, and this is not going to be for me because I respect consultants, I respect bankers, I respect everyone from other industries. Other investors, other VCs and tech people look down on legacy. And so adjust yourself at the end a little more explicitly.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool. And then like another thing, can we go a little bit more into like just like the implementation and like what exactly you're building?
Yeah, absolutely. So we built a B2B SaaS platform where companies upload their company information. So think company identifiers like their SIC code or their DUNS number, their website.
Stuff that's like people are typically more like privacy sensitive about?
Yeah, we are very data privacy focused. And that's one of our core tenets is making sure that the data owner truly owns their data and has full transparency over to where their data has been shared and the ability to revoke access to that data. And we're compliant with 50 states' data privacy regulations, which is something that's difficult for companies to do because they are fragmented by each state. There isn't a universal data privacy regulation in the United States, such as GDPR in Europe. So that is a key piece to it. In terms of the data that's uploaded, it's like key company identifiers, as I mentioned previously, your payment methods, who your key contacts are for this data and who you would call in case you had a question about it, as well as key documents for the company itself, like your articles of incorporation or the fact that you're a women-owned business, including that certification, or what your SOC 2 Type 2 audit report was for the year 2024. And so you upload all this information once into our vault, and you can share any customized subset of that data with whichever institutions you need to share that data with. And then they will get the latest and greatest of all of that data, assuming you keep the connection live and as you update things. So if you update your SOC 2 Type 2 audit report every year, they will get the latest and greatest version and continue to get that. And they'll just get a notification on the other side of the network saying, hey, Catherine's company uploaded their latest report. And then they have it. It eliminates all of the email and manual back and forth between analysts on both sides.
What's the most, you gave like articles of incorporation as a top of funnel example.
Sure.
What's like a bottom of funnel data example, as in something that's a little more changing and evolving or interesting?
Well, KYC is a big process that banks go through, or clients have to go through with their banks every year.
Let me ask the question differently. Is it only for milestone data, or is it also for, I don't know what other word to use? Milestone data to me feels like these are good examples. Certifications, processes, things that pass through, and there's like, again, an evidence document. Is this also for, I don't know why the person would need to share this, the client would need to share this data so much, but like all of my clients' financial data, I might also upload to your cloud because this year I want to send it to 4 of my vendor partners. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's completely customizable. You could put any document in there that you needed to. So in the example of if there was borrowers who needed to like testify basically to the bank that they are meeting the loan criteria, they need to upload their financials depending on the criteria of the loan, either every month or every quarter or every year, and they need to show that they're meeting those financial metrics. So it could be something that's sort of a living and breathing document that evolves with their company.
Thank you for that explanation. I feel like I had to go straight into asking more questions because like I don't hang out in this space a lot, and I'm not too big to admit that. I guess like one of my questions now when I think about your pitch that I think about is like, there are different types of like cloud storage solutions and really want to know like in your mind, what are some like the shortcomings of like potential offerings of, I get fragmented and like really challenging, but for either potential like document storage or like cloud storage, et cetera, like why don't any of these like fit the bill for the folks that you want to sell to?
Sure. The current data room solutions, which are what small and medium-sized businesses typically use, what you have to do is you have to set up a data room for each set of data that you want to share. So if you're sharing data with, let's say, 10 business partners, you're going to set up 10 individual data rooms if there's one difference between each of those 10 data rooms. And so you're manually dragging and dropping documents into those 10 spaces. Whereas with our data vault, you have it in your vault once, and then you can just choose sort of like check boxes as to which data is going to be shared with each party. And then it just reduces all of that manual work.
Is there a reason that the other companies that provide solutions in this space, or even a generalist company like a Box, take that approach of it's data room or folder specific as opposed to it's first the data, then how you share it? Is there like a philosophy behind that?
Yeah.
That's a good question. I'm not aware of what that philosophy would be.
I have a micro rant to go on this. Do you want to go?
You can do
So
it.
like the reason this is important, and it might be key to your pitch, because otherwise you might accidentally sound too trivial, as in like your answer to Lauren's question is not good, but I don't know if you can improve it as is.
Sure.
Because someone might get excited because they might be an expert, but they're going to go, oh, do I believe I want to invest in or participate in a company that's like helping slightly differently do this thing that is possible by other providers? And you might go, no, there's a big enough market for that, but then you got to convince them of that market.
Yeah.
I think there might be a philosophy difference. I'm going to compare this to applicant tracking systems, which are the things that companies use to hire people. So ATS is basically CRM for companies hiring.
Okay.
And most ATSs, so again, like when you apply to a job online, your resume and all that information is going to a job that you applied to so that a recruiter or a hiring manager can log in, they can look at the job applications and they see your name. And there was a company called Lever that started a little bit later than a company called Greenhouse. And the foundational difference between Lever and most of it, the rest of the market, including Greenhouse, not wind up succeeding because of this, but it's the difference was their back-end model. They're literally the database, but also the philosophy of the database was we are candidate-centric, not job-centric. So all these other ATSs were built on the notion of a job exists before a person.
Sure.
And so even when you wanted to look up a person, they were attached, again, literally in the back end in the database, but also philosophically to a job. And so if you added a person, eventually all of them had to come away, have hijacked the person into the database. But technically, we are job-oriented. And Lever was like, no, it should be a person, which also meant when you logged into Lever, it focused on candidates who are of a certain status versus when you logged into Greenhouse, it focused on jobs that had these candidates applying to them. That might not sound like a huge difference, but it is.
No, it is.
Yeah.
It's very meaningful. I
Yeah.
mean, we do upload it. You're right. It is data first. And that's the key piece to it, because when you go in, for example, with my SOC 2 Type 2 audit report example, you're specifically going in to update that piece of data. You're not going in to update a data room for investor ABC or client
Well,
Y.
once you imagine the workflow, it's super easy. It's like, great,
Yeah.
articles of incorporation, I constantly have to give to people. It's a stupid document. And it's like, great, I have to go find the articles to put into an email or a folder to send to somebody versus what you're saying is,
Exactly.
I'm to go where all the data exists and create a little mini folder or a little share link and send it in 2 seconds. And again, that workflow, the difference, people who don't experience this though, like again, I immediately was like articles of incorporation. You might have a real hard time. And again, I wonder about your world. That's why this example came up. I'm like trying to think of what else feels like this. And again, that ATS example is the only one I can think of. So this is going to be somewhat challenging because I think that showcases the importance. So you have to have like almost a philosophy of data conversation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think like that's like the biggest thing that I was trying to get at when I'm saying like, you know, compared to other possible data storage solutions, right? Like, why is the way that you're trying to like reorganize this flow, like, why does this make sense? And like, I think when you like either can like, you know, simulate the potential outcomes or the changes or just like the intuitiveness, et cetera, like, I think that will add a lot to like, to your pitch.
And one of the ways I would imagine that, by the way, I also got hung up on this milestones thing. Have some examples that aren't milestones, because again, I go like, if it's just for articles of incorporation and KYC and stuff, that stuff only gets updated every so often or never and feels like only a handful of things.
Sure.
And by the way, I might be wrong that it's a handful of things for most companies, or I might be wrong about how often it's updated, but then you've got to convince me of those stuff. Whereas if your examples include some stuff that's a little more living or like
If it's like a
contextually,
frequently, like,
Yeah.
I am constantly doing this, and yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
really appreciate you sharing. It sounds compelling.
Thank you
Good job.
so much.
Simple, thanks.
Unsexy businesses, super hard.
Yeah.
Because you have to like convince somebody again, like the difference between the first pitch that we heard around healthcare versus this one, we can imagine the impact or we can feel it feels visceral versus this one. We got to go like, okay, great. There are like 7 different workflows to business impact. should the founders of unsexy businesses do a better job getting into a more interesting and but boring conversation with you, or should they try to make the thing sound sexy? Which has been more successful with you over time? In other words, I might, as a founder, go, it's unsexy. Let me get into why it's a great market opportunity. Let me like really dig into the details with you. Or should I find analogies, compare it to Uber, even if it shouldn't be, and just like try to get you hooked first?
First of all, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I do think unsexy is very sexy.
Yeah.
No, I kind of like the first, kind of thing that you suggested as far as like, hey, unsexy business, but like, let me tell you about the market opportunity. Honestly, I think like the quote unquote boring businesses or like the ones that are a bit more traditional, assuming that they've been around forever, that typically is a sign that they're like pretty like imperative to business and society. So I don't think there's anything wrong with quote unquote like the unsexy or maybe some of like the bit older ones. But I do think it's important that like, if someone is not a subject matter expert in there, to present like why it's a massive opportunity and like the pressing need of that solution, or like how frustrating it is, or like the fact that like, hey, like folks are spending, hours, like hundreds of hours a week doing this, or like, hey, like this is actually probably one of the biggest stopgaps in a workflow. Like I think like when you kind of emphasize just the gravity of the frustration, then it doesn't,
Because the before and after is harder to imagine.
for sure.
Yeah. Love it.
Yeah.
Nice founder up.
Yeah, let's do it.
Round of applause. Founder number 4. What's your name?
My name is Jeremy Yenser.
Jeremy, you're going to have a minute to pitch here and then get your feedback. You ready?
I am ready.
Awesome. What are you building?
All right, so I am building Mindful Buddy, which I researched the top 25 meditation apps in the iOS and Google Play Store. And apps like Calm and Headspace are great and they've helped millions, but 90% of users don't stick with meditation because they forget or don't have time. So that's where Mindful Buddy comes in, is we automatically sync with your digital calendar to be able to help find the best time for you to meditate. And then it just schedules it right into your digital calendar. We also have our AI companion, Amy, which personalizes each session based on mood and goals. So we just launched in iOS and Google Play. We had 300 beta testers and we have a 1,700 email list. We received phenomenal feedback through that. And what the future of us looks like is we want to create the first social meditation network. So being able to connect people together using their digital calendars, finding the best time for them to meditate, and then being able to use AI to be able to lead that meditation with them together. So it could be individualized with 2 friends or connecting them with people across the world.
Good job. Interesting.
Okay, I have many thoughts. So it's funny when you said like, hey, people will start with like Calm or Headspace and they don't stick because like they'll forget. Do you think that's the reason why people don't continue to meditate?
I think people they forget, they're busy. I think if people want to meditate, they want to find calm in their day. I just think people are really busy and that's the first thing that goes out of the window. So if you're using a digital calendar like me, I live by my digital calendar and even I forget sometimes, but if I just automatically had it in my calendar rather than, I had 5 minutes in between breaks and scrolling through social media, if I had that 5-minute window in my calendar to do a mindfulness practice, I'd be far more likely to most likely follow through with that because the reminder's right in the tool that I'm already using.
I guess like for me, the challenge that I see with something like this is like someone is telling me to do something that I still like I might want to do, but I'm not necessarily like actively prioritizing myself. It's challenging because when you say like, hey, someone is busy, so they might forget, that doesn't change, right? Like, so even if you put the time on someone's calendar, they're still, and like, at least in my mind, busy. And so when you're saying like, hey, I'm creating a reminder for you to do this, I could have a reminder, right now to do something or tomorrow. But if my calendar is such that, well, I'm still going to be like, I still have these X meetings, I still have Y, like maybe in the back of my mind, I see it, but it's hard for me if I'm not necessarily actively making that appointment on my calendar, if that makes sense. Those are at least like my initial thoughts, but you might add.
You started with the calendar thing after your introduction to the problem. So you started with like, I went to the App Store, I did these things, and the first thing your app did was it inserted into the calendar. the way you did that made it sound trivial at first, that you then built up to towards the minute, but that caused so much of what she's thinking, what I'm thinking, to be anchored on this idea that you solve for the fact people forget. Then you double down on it by answering her question with, yeah, people forget. Because you're not starting grander, both in your pitch and in the answer to that question, people are going to get stuck in the fact that what you're suggesting sounds trivial. This conversation doesn't matter. Some people forget, some people don't. But some people don't do it for other reasons and do it for other reasons, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's an invitation for you in the answer, but also in the pitch to go, what's the grander thing? People have a variety of things that prevent them from meditating. We believe that a companion that hijacks your calendar and your journal and your wearable will be able to inject, both through time, personalized suggestions, and some other things, meditation in a way where it will be likelier and more pleasurable for you to be compliant with what you want to do. And so you see that grander thing that then has consequence versus you started with a consequence,
Right.
got us stuck on.
Yeah.
And again, it's funny to think while I was there, I was like, nah, maybe that's not important, but it winds up being, I think, everything. So I think that's a great point. I think that's the challenge you have, especially meditation, has so many small factors to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
A different problem, if I'm bleeding and I need a Band-Aid, that's very direct problem solved. Yours is people want to meditate. There's a variety of reasons they don't. There's a variety of reasons they could. There's a variety of things you could do. So you actually do have to umbrella those. That's one thing. The other thing, you start with the App Store thing, but you didn't conclude for me. So you said, I went to the App Store and I searched the top 25 meditation apps, and Headspace and Calm, they're great and they've helped a lot of people. But people generally leave meditation apps. I don't remember what you said literally, but you didn't close the loop. You didn't close the story. So I was like, okay, he looked at all of them. 2 of them help a lot of people and he exists. That's the sequence you gave me. Whereas what I wanted is, what I found is most people churn out of most of them, and here's my hypothesis as to why. And then here's how I'm fixing it. So you gave a story that you didn't use, right? So find your way to go like, let me say something about what I'm bringing up. Because again, this is clearly, I will never be able to meditate until they can literally hijack my brain. My brain, you can tell even when I talk, probably I talk really fast. I just can't. However, I believe this is, and we've had founders pitch, I believe this is a great space. Sounds like you're working on, I like this idea of the calendar hijacking, not necessarily just how I would have answered that question is, this is one of many things. And so if I have a personalized message on the calendar, I'm doing 2 things to hijack your ability to meditate. Then I'm going to add a friend, because when you got to your vision, I was like, oh, interesting. I didn't expect for us to get social. And usually I'd actually give a founder feedback of why'd you get so grand at the end there? You didn't give me enough of that early. And is this a social meditation thing? But with yours, I was like, no, there's a lot of things. And in the same way that yoga exists as a collective practice, meditation exists in a collective practice and being made easier through an app with the calendar, with the personalization. You see it's all these things, things and things.
Yeah. No, for sure. And it's interesting. I have to take a step back and put a different hat on. I do a lot of B2B stuff. And so when I think about more of the consumer wellness era, I think if I were you, I would kind of lean a little bit more into that within your pitch. So if you're saying hey, there's an uptick in folks who are going through meditation or mindfulness, or we're seeing, there's just a lot of excitement around it. Typically, there's this many downloads per day. This is how it's changing people's lives. People are actively looking for meditation classes, or I'm sure yoga right now is so popular and it's so growing, kind of if you're weaving that into the story, I think it makes it a bit more appealing to an investor who thinks hey, you know what? I didn't really consider mindfulness or meditation as something that is growing as fast as it is, or is as prevalent or as much of a need, especially when
what tailwind are you taking advantage of?
Right. And I think when
that
you're
makes sense.
I think when you're in spaces kind of as ambiguous as wellness, you have to kind of show more data that's saying there's truly an appetite that people want to do this more. Because I'm not gonna lie, in my mind, I'm well, maybe they're just forgetting because they don't feel like doing it. And and I don't think that's true. I do think that there's a population of people who's I love meditating, or I love practicing mindfulness, and I like to have if I just was reminded hey, do this, I would take action and I would do it. I would find me a corner and I would just sit somewhere for 5 minutes. And, like, I think one of the key to sales is I think you have to see something like 5 times before you buy it.
Yeah.
And even when it comes to, we're going to send you 5 alerts so that hey, you know what, let me like get my butt up and like go meditate. Or there's people who are opting into these types of things, then it's like, oh, wow. Like, I might not have thought about something like this before, but I'm seeing based off of fact that there's truly like a want for something like this. And I think that like makes, your story and your pitch even more exciting.
I love how real you are, Lauren, because it's like, that face
Can't be
you made.
fake.
You made that face and you went like, I don't know, they're just not going to do it because they forgot. That's so real, and not just use a human being real in this moment.
Yeah.
Founders, both of you, but I say this to the world: don't forget how trivial good pitch versus bad pitch can be, because that reaction, and not necessarily about this in particular, truly, although this too, is like literally what's going on. And when people get money or don't, it goes with that feeling in the wind of like, oh, I don't know, like people might forget. And your job as a founder in a very crowded space, you're not a tar pit idea, but you're almost, do you know the concept of tar pit startup?
I haven't heard that.
So tar pit startup, and again, you're like adjacent, you're not a full, but it's typically something like a weightlifting app or a note-taking app or a dating app, because what winds up happening is everyone who's in college or right after college wants to solve their own problem. So thousands of young people create apps in these spaces because they are experiencing the problem themselves. Creates a tar pit that no one can get out of because there are too many solutions, but not enough of a paying want. You're adjacent because I think this is a real want, but it has a lot of solutions. And I think the reason it hasn't sorted itself out is because this is meditation in general is relatively new. That's my hypothesis. But the reason it's a similar thing here, right? It's like your job as a founder to pull us out of that moment and tell enough because there are so many meditation apps. Again, I'm even compelled. As much as I've given you a lot of feedback, like your minute pitch to me, I was like, oh, cool. I'm not going to be a user. I can imagine there are a lot of users of this, and a new approach after Headspace and Calm makes a lot of sense. Calm, from what I understand, because Jason Calacanis can't stop talking about it, is doing well, or he claims it's in one of his investments. And so like, okay, there's a lot of things here that I might like, but you've got to convince me that your version of it and your approach is so different and compelling, net of all of those things. And I think, again, you have a broader mandate than most. And again, I love that face and voice you did, because that's why, right? It's just like so easy to be like, all right, another one of these. Like I've tried both of those. I thought, another one. Fight that, right? And again, some people are going to go, oh, I've got to revise my pitch. Maybe this isn't a good idea. VC doesn't want, or maybe I'm not telling the story right. I go, no, maybe you're telling the story right. You're just not realizing you're causing that feeling, that fleeting feeling of like, I can discard this. And an example, just to like really ground this, because I want to make sure this doesn't sound too abstract, is like, is there a user, and maybe this is a real question too, because we haven't let you talk at all. We've just given you feedback this entire time. So this is a real question for you. Is there a user experience that is so the hero user journey that you think you're enabling for the first time that doesn't exist in these other spaces that you're most proud of?
Absolutely. Yeah. Through our 300 beta testers, I've had several people who've never meditated or done mindfulness before, and literally I could send you text messages of people changing. Why
are they enjoying yours in particular? Why is it succeeding for them?
I think a big part is actually the community. I mean, part of the beta testing was we created a community on WhatsApp, so people have been interacting together, and what I noticed is through that community that people are more likely to engage with it. They're more likely to be reminded of it. So that's where really the idea for the social meditation aspect of it is that.
So I like your answer, except, right? Except it doesn't have to do with your solution. So you have to change your pitch a little bit more, right? If, again, maybe grander vision first would allow for this.
Right.
But because you started from workflow and hijacking my calendar, you started so much from I'm a solo player, not a multiplayer user of your app.
Right.
And this is a multiplayer example. But the reason this would have worked if it was part of this grander vision, is because you're going, well, you don't do this on common Headspace.
All right.
You might have some, I'm sure they have share features, so I'm probably literally wrong, but there's something about what you're enabling there. That's the hero story you'd anchor everything around. You go like, what we all don't realize is if we could do this together, we'd do it more and we'd do it better. And blah, 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 blah.
Makes a lot of sense.
Super interesting though. Sounds like you're on the early part of an exciting journey. I'm jealous. Good luck.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Just a question for you. Do you think you'll ever meditate? Oh, wait, hold on. I assumed you didn't because of your slight stories. Yes.
Do you
successfully meditate?
I actually took a mindfulness class in college. many years ago. But yeah, no, like it was a elective, like one or two
class.
I took a class, 1 or 2 credit class, and we actually spent time practicing like meditation and mindfulness. You could take a lot of very interesting classes. I also took a class on like video game music, but yeah, that was fun. But but like so I like every week we actually practice mindfulness, which was fantastic. I don't practice it as much in my day-to-day, but I do like in the mornings when I start my day, I actually like journal and I like have my moment with God and, pray and stuff like that.
Thing. I think like meditation as a word.
Yeah.
We should expand its definition a little bit, because I feel there's so many ways people can execute on the broad activity of time with self.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Super interesting. By the way, speaking of music, just as a side for everybody, because it was on my mind as soon as you said it, Suno, if anyone remembers that app that allows you to play music, does anyone use the AI-generated music app Suno ever in the past few years? No? So it like got its attention a year or two ago. It was like, oh, look, AI is creating relatively legible music. It was okay before. They just released version 4 in November, I want to say, and I played with it yesterday, and other people have been playing with it. Songs that I had ChatGPT script and then have Suno turned into actual music are stuck in my head. I think that's a sign that it's good enough.
Wow, that's crazy.
And by the way, they're very cringe songs about venture capital, so they shouldn't get stuck in my head, and yet they are. Again, AI is on something. So try Suno, speaking of video game music.
I have to try this. It sounds fascinating.